Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Talent Development Hot Seat. I am your host, Andy Storch, and I am excited that you are joining me today for an interview with my friend Scott Luberto. And Scott is the Technical Training Manager for Luck Companies, one of the nation's largest family-owned and operating businesses in the aggregates industry. Scott's mission is to help ordinary people lead extraordinary lives, and his team has solved the challenge of developing and retaining talent by using data-driven development through the use of skill-based 360s. And it's something that I think a lot of people might be interested in. And so I'm excited to have you on today. Scott, welcome to the Talent Development Hot Seat.
Thanks. I'm excited to be a part of it today.
Yeah, this is cool. We connected a while back through some friends, and you showed me a little bit about what you've been doing with those data-driven, skill-based 360s. And I know you are big on helping people identify where to focus their development efforts using data. Personalizing learning and measuring effectiveness over time. And I think that as I go to conferences and talk to different talent professionals and people across different industries, everybody's big on helping their people learn and develop and create that great career path. But I think a lot of people are still struggling with, how do I leverage data? How do I know that I'm sending people in the right direction and giving them the right development versus just making recommendations that may or may not stick, right? And this is where you've been spending a lot of your time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, let's back up, and why don't you share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I came out of college and I actually did this really phenomenal program called Teach for America, where they take high-performing college students and they put them in usually high-poverty, low-performing schools. So I had the opportunity to teach at a phenomenal school down in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I taught ninth grade world history for a couple years. So if you want to learn like great facilitation techniques and how to keep an audience energized and engaged, start with ninth graders. Everybody else will be easier. And then I had the opportunity to come work for Luck Companies as first a values trainer and coach, and then now as their technical training manager. And then through that work, came aware of kind of an opportunity and founded a software as a service company called Atlas Navigator.
That's right, Atlas Nav. So let's talk about that. How did all of this come about? Where did this idea come from?
Yeah, so we were using this really cool approach at Luck where we were trying to essentially solve a problem that I think a lot of training managers have, and it's where do you prioritize your really limited resources? And so when I got into my role, I wanted to do like a very primitive level kind of training needs analysis. And so I went around the organization and I was asking various managers, what training would be most beneficial to your folks? What are the key business issues or skills that we're really lacking? And I was getting a lot of, we've got a kind of two groups of folks. We've got folks who have been doing this for a really long time and they're pretty skilled and they don't need a ton of attention. We just got to keep them engaged. And then we have a ton of folks who are brand new, 1 or 2 years of experience at best, and they don't really know how to do a lot. They're really green. They need a lot of help. So I said, okay, that's great. Like, what skills can I teach them? And they said, no, really, they don't know much. Like anything you can offer them would be helpful. I said, but specifically, and they're like, nope, anything. Well, that's not super helpful. So I said, well, I'm a big proponent of learning being self-directed. And so I said, let me go talk to those new folks. And so in talking to a lot of those new folks, I asked them, I hear that you're new. I hear that you're learning. Like what skills would be most beneficial to you? And they go, no, I've been doing this for 6 months. I think I'm pretty squared away. And I was like, gosh, like what an interesting disconnect that sometimes their management thinks they need a ton of help and the individual thinks they're in a really good spot. And then I actually got to reflecting on that. And I said, you know what? It's interesting because when I was a teacher, in Teach for America, early on, you get introduced to your class, and over the course of a day, you'll have 120 ninth graders who are looking up at you. And I remember for the first 6 months, you're just trying to survive. And you're just trying to stay a couple pages ahead of them in the book, and you're trying to not openly cry in front of the kids. Like, don't let them win today. Over the course of 6 months, you start to build that relationship with the students and you get good at your job. And so by the end of my first year, I remember I won Rookie Teacher of the Year. And I had this moment where I said, you know what, I figured it out. Teaching, I thought it was hard, right? Um, and then I went to the summer and I started watching podcasts and going to conferences and came across what I would call like truly excellent teachers. And I realized that what I thought what I was doing was great, but I really just was aware of this much of
Mm,
what greatness really was.
right. You don't know what you don't know. And
You
so,
don't know what you don't know.
right. And so if you go to someone and they're not really aware of where they could improve or how they could get better, and you say, what what knowledge do you need? How do you, what training do you need? And they're like, I'm good. I'm
I'm
good.
good.
Right. Like
In there, in,
I know how to sit here and podcast and ask questions, but if I listen to other podcasts like I do, and I hear people who are expert interviewers, I know I can get better. But without
yeah,
that exposure, I would just tell you, no, I'm good, man. I know what I'm doing.
killing it.
Right. Okay.
And so I said, how do you help people become aware of what they don't know?
Yeah.
And so I was fortunate where I got to go on kind of a benchmarking expedition. And I called and reached out to any, really capable training manager, director, head of HR that would talk to me. And the thing I love about this field is everybody is so willing to share and help. And I got a ton of support from Caterpillar. And they had one individual who kind of showed me some different ways and really inspired me on this competency-based approach. So I really kind of dug into that, and essentially through some work with them and some other industry leaders and just doing some research, came up with a process where you use your highest performers in a given role to kind of define that success and what excellence looks like. And then you use that to kind of gauge where your folks are at and then drive their development.
Got it. So essentially, you are defining what does success look like? What does great look like in this role by asking everyone around, okay, who is the highest performer here? Who's doing the best job? And
Yep.
then now we can look at everyone else and say, well, how are they measuring up to that? Where are they falling short? And therefore, what skills or knowledge do they need? So not judging them and saying, oh, they're not as good, but maybe they don't have all the skills. They don't have quite as much experience. You could even go to that top performer, that great performer, and say, how did you get to where you are? What did you learn? What sort of things do you
Got it.
do? How long have you been doing this, right? And then start to build out a curriculum based on that. So is that what you did?
That's exactly. So I said, the other thing that if there's something I've learned, that's a challenge that I've personally faced is, you know, you need to go slow to go fast. So I wanted to just roll something out. And I've realized that change management is a huge part of whatever you do. You're going to spend time either building consensus beforehand or kind of doing damage control after the fact. And so the really cool thing about this approach was by leveraging your top performers in those roles, you're building champions as you go. And then by taking that model and validating it with the subject matter experts, with the key leaders, with the people that might be your challengers or naysayers, you're really going to have credibility when you kind of publish this model. And a lot of people are going to go, you know what, I had a say in that, or I really respect that high performer. And if he blesses it, I'm going to buy into it. And so we took that model, we created like a custom digital 360, and we went out to folks and we had them rate themselves, had their manager rate them against that rubric. And we also, if they had a peer who was doing a similar role, had them rate them. So I'm getting all this really cool data where I'm able to say, okay, you know, at the skill of communication, this person is a 3 out of 5. And then I say, okay, what are the behaviors that somebody needs to get to be a level 4 out of 5? And I can look across an entire organization and see, okay, if most of my folks are at a level 3 out of 5, that's where I need to spend my limited resources. So it really solves that problem for a training manager on like, where do you need to focus your efforts?
Yeah, where do you develop new programs? So oftentimes what we'll end up doing, or what I see people doing, is some executive comes in and says, hey, we need training on leadership. Our people are not great leaders, or we need training on technical training on how to do this particular process, because they observe one or two people that really need help with that. But what you're saying is you look at all the data 360s across the board, and you can say, yeah, there are a couple people that need help there, but actually this thing over here is where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck, because we have a lot of people who are below average here or average, and need to be raised up.
Yeah, if there's one way you want to win the respect of kind of business leaders, it's when they try to spend money to tackle an issue that they have anecdotal evidence for.
Yeah.
And you can say, actually, I don't think you need to spend money there because overall we're in a really good spot. And
Mm,
that's just a couple data points. And we can solve those folks. We can provide them some individual development, but as an organization, we don't need that.
yeah.
And here's the
So,
data to support that.
right. So, and that is true. I mean, that's how you win over hearts and minds, right? Because you're clearly making strategic decisions. You're using data, looking at the KPIs, the things they care about, and winning them over because they're saying, okay, this guy's not just taking budget that we give him; he wants to use it strategically. So, can you give me an example or a case study of how you use this and where this worked?
Yeah, so we use this with a group of folks at Luck. And so they have a role called a plant operator. And so we rolled this out in conjunction with a coaching model. So we said, let's pilot it with 20 folks just to see if it works. So we rolled out the 360, had the data for that group. We then designated an individual, a kind of an expert in the field, as their coach. And his full-time job became coaching others on their skill gaps. So each individual had their 360s. We sat down with them and their manager, and we helped them identify, here's the 3 to 6 things we want you to prioritize and work on. And so it's truly personalized learning for each person. Then over the course of 6 months, we provided them on-the-job coaching. So this coach went to that location and provided specific training on what they were trying to work on. And then we kind of tracked the improvement over time. And I think in a 6-month period from 360 to 360, the group average was a 14, close to 15% improvement. So I was able to show over time that the coaching model was working, that this personalized development was actually working, and kind of show, I know a lot of training managers are eager to show the impact of training, and that was a really cool way to get after it.
Yeah. So, what did that impact look like, and what did you bring to the executives to show them this worked?
Yeah, so because of the 360 data, I'm able to go to them with the really cool anecdotal evidence, like, the money that our folks are saving because they're doing better maintenance or they're being safer. Or, I think there's also a really positive impact on engagement, because I think there's something to be said for if a company's spending the time to provide you that really individualized training, that I think in talking to a lot of colleagues in the industry, that level of personalized training is often only reserved for upper management to have something like a personal coach. So for our folks at Luck, it's been phenomenal because the guys feel truly special, cared for, developed. And so they are really engaged and loyal to the company.
Now, that sounds great. Doesn't that get really expensive to provide this personal level of coaching and development to, to anyone, but oftentimes companies are doing it at the highest levels and not so much at the mid or frontline or individual contributor level. So how do you make that work?
Yes, there's a couple of approaches. So one of the things I think the benefit of providing the on the job. So we had for years pulled folks out of the production to provide that training, whether it's in a classroom or a shop to provide that training. And that's actually taking them out of production. Whereas with this coaching model, I'm able to keep that person continuing to produce, and often at a higher level because they have an expert work with them helping. So they're faster, they're more efficient. So I'm actually saving production time. Through my work with Atlas, I've talked to a lot of folks where hiring coaches is not an option. So I've seen some folks be really creative around using people that are already there, whether it's managers, right? So you can decentralize the training to the managers, provide them with that tool to provide the really good feedback and training. And it's kind of that guide, so they're not just doing it blind. Or one group we're talking to, they're thinking about taking somebody who's kind of towards the end of their career, who's thinking more about significance than success and what's their legacy going to be. And they've been doing the same thing for the last 15 years. They're kind of looking for something new. So they're going to take that person, and 2 days a week, they're going to be a coach. And the other 3 days, they'll just do their job. But it's a really cool way to kind of keep somebody engaged towards the end of their career.
Yeah, definitely. And also a way to transfer knowledge. And I have had conversations with um, talent professionals at some big companies in the past year or so where they're wondering, okay, we have all of this, we have these really great employees who have been here for 30 plus years. They're getting ready to retire. They have so much knowledge of how things work at this company. And while things are changing, there's a lot of value they could give to the other employees if we could find a way to, pull and share that knowledge. So one of the ways you're saying is to make them a coach a couple days a week. Is there anything else you've seen that works for that?
Yeah. So one thing I would say is though, that can work really well, and I've seen it work well. But I think an issue is you don't always just want to take the most experienced person
Yeah.
and make them a coach, right? It is a
Yeah.
skill set.
I was gonna say that as well. Okay, good.
Yeah. So oftentimes we find the person who's the best equipment operator is the best equipment operator because they like to be in a piece of equipment by themselves all day.
Right.
That does not necessarily make them a great coach of other
Right.
people.
Leave them
Um,
alone. Let them
yeah.
get to work.
But there are other folks who have a passion for it, are naturally good at it, or are willing to learn techniques on how to mentor and coach. So I think as training managers and directors, you've got to create programs to teach them that skill of coaching and training.
Right. Okay. Well, you mentioned Atlas. Let's talk about the work you're doing with other companies. Is it similar, and how does it work? I mean, obviously, honestly, I'm curious, and I think a lot of other people would be curious too, because I encounter many people in training and development who kind of want to do a little consulting work on the side, but they have a full-time job. So you've got this software you've set up to help other companies with this, and it sounds like Luck is supporting you in working with other companies while you're still doing your job there. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so I'd say Atlas was kind of born out of, as you can imagine, creating all these development plans, creating all these 360s, managing the
Mhm.
data, kind of becomes like it became an animal, a beast that I couldn't keep up with. And if you're any company of size, that quickly becomes not manageable. So the approach was really successful, but I quickly realized I wasn't going to be able to do that for 800, 1,000 people. So I needed something. So I went out and looked for a potential vendor. I was like, there's got to be something that I can upload my competency models into. It will let people assess themselves, and then I can preload it with the content that I'm suggesting to folks when they score a level 3 at communication out of 5. And it just says, if you're a level 3, you should go do this. If you're a level 4, you should go do this. Because I think a trend I'm seeing in the industry is gone are the days of kind of rolling out the one size fits all training that really doesn't fit anyone well. I mean, I know I've been asked to put together trainings for folks and they say, teach everybody welding. And, these folks over here have been welding for 25 years and these folks over here have never touched, any welding equipment.
Right.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And so as an instructor, what do? You shoot down the middle. These people are bored out of their minds and these people are lost for the whole day. So I said, there's got to be a solution that can kind of personalize that and automate that personalization. And so I knew, because I have a full-time job, right? I couldn't go start a company, off of my, a consulting company. So I said, is there a software solution that can kind of help people with this similar problem? Because I was also aware that a lot of companies have competency models that they've spent a ton of time, money, and energy developing,
Mm-hmm.
and they're sitting in a drawer, not being used. And I've also seen a ton of companies who spend a tremendous amount of money on 360 assessments for their folks. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think there's this really magical moment at the end of a 360 where people want to do more, learn more, be more. But if they don't know the next step and what they should go do, it can also just go in the drawer.
Right. Yeah. So you started looking for this software, and if I remember right from talking to you before, you didn't find it.
Couldn't find it, got super bummed out. I was like, gosh, I'm going to be doing this with like a hodgepodge of systems and forms and paper, and it's going to drive me crazy. And then, the the entrepreneurial light bulb went off in my head, and I said, maybe there's an opportunity here. And so, like you kind of mentioned, I don't have time, but I had the idea and I had the industry knowledge. So I reached out to some folks that I knew were kind of independent consultants and had started kind of their own small venture capital firm. And I said, I've got this idea. I've got the industry knowledge. I think you should go chase this. So they're kind of the drivers behind the day to day and do the consulting work and all that. And I just kind of give them the practitioner's mind on kind of the philosophy, the approach, and kind of what the tool needs to look and feel like.
Got it. Okay. And how did you get the software developed? Because you're not a programmer, and
I
it's
am
not
not a
easy to just
programmer.
go develop some software. But you
Yeah, so
showed it to me a little bit before, and it was impressive. So how did you get that done?
yeah, so for all those folks who like think you can just go, I did not do the, how to code for dummies and try to figure this out myself. Uh, we kind of, it's kind of an entrepreneurial anecdote where we thought we had some, first we just started with friends who were really good coders. And then we realized that it was going to be more complex and complicated than just, a friend working nights and weekends. So we ended up actually putting it out for scope and bid out to a professional development firm. So again, that kind of freed up my time just to kind of design and say what I wanted in this product, and then professionals could build it out.
Got it. Okay. And then you had connected with, you said, a friend in venture capital, so they were able to raise the money to pay for this developer to go build the software.
Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. And so where has it gone from there?
Yeah, so far we're excited because the actual product goes live. So we've been building out this MVP. We've been doing some kind of pilot testing, but Friday is our big day. So we'll have our full-blown product. In the meantime, in order to fully utilize the product, you have to have competency models and you've got to have content. So my partners have been working with folks and consulting with folks on how to develop those competency models, kind of following our kind of structured approach, so that when the tool is ready, they can plug their stuff in and start rolling it out.
Okay, well, so the software is actually going live very soon, and it'll be a few weeks before this episode airs. So by the time anyone is listening to this, the software should be live and available. Who is this for? If someone's listening, thinking, I wonder if this would work for me, who's a good candidate to leverage this software in their organization?
Yeah, so I would say kind of our ideal, right, when I think about who would use this, anyone who is trying to personalize learning at scale. So if you've got 5 or 6 folks, right, you can probably manage that. If you've got less than 50, 80, 100, you can probably do that with your Excel sheets and your paper 360s and things like that.
Mm,
But I would say anyone in a large organization who's trying to shift from a kind of compliance or role-based, everybody must do every bit of this training, and wants to truly figure out what training their folks need and then provide a personalized experience, and then wants to use data to drive their kind of training vision, I'd say they're an ideal candidate.
got it. Okay, great. Switching gears here a little bit, as you've gone through
Yeah.
this journey and you have been developing what you've been doing at Luck, and overall, what's been your proudest accomplishment so far?
Ooh, Friday will be a really proud day.
Yeah.
I'll be really excited to see it. It's, I come from a family of crane operators. So
Okay.
one thing I've always been really jealous of is I can go home to New York or New Jersey and I can see what they've built. They can point to buildings and say, like, that's my thing. So I think there's a special pride that comes with Atlas on, like, this is my thing. This is something that we've built, and I think it'll provide a tremendous amount of value. And I think it's, when I think about my personal purpose of helping ordinary people live extraordinary lives,
Hmm.
I mean, I think the thing that drove me to Teach for America is just helping people who may not have opportunity have that opportunity. And I think this tool will help them. It'll help folks that aren't in the C-suite get personalized development like they never have.
I like it. Okay, great. Flip side, what's been your biggest failure or mistake along the way?
Yeah, so like I kind of mentioned earlier, was I like to go fast. I am
Yeah.
from New York originally, so we like to kind of clip along.
Yeah.
And I have many times in the past gotten myself in trouble where I think I have a really good idea. I put together a strategy. I put together a project plan, and I'm off and running. And I can leave kind of key stakeholders behind me. And that can lead to a tremendous amount of frustration and stress and unnecessary stress on folks. So if there's one thing I've learned, it's just the need to build consensus and momentum as you go.
Yeah. Slow down and bring people with you, influence others. build that momentum, get key stakeholders and influencers, executives on board before you start charging ahead. And everyone's like, where's that guy going? What's he doing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Got it. What's been your biggest challenge with all of this, or what is the challenge today that would get in the way of companies implementing this?
I'd say the biggest challenge is, and so developing, I'd say it's really easy to go buy right? You can go on Google right now and download a competency for any role. And
Hmm.
we've talked, or it's really easy for your HR department to get in a room with maybe one or two managers and craft one. I think the problem then becomes the rollout, right? It is that change management. So I've just seen folks struggle with, they put a bunch of time and energy into developing this kind of in a silo, and they can't get buy-in now. They can't roll it out. And it's the people in the role saying, how are you going to tell me how to do my role better than I know how to do my role?
Mm.
And so the number one challenge I've seen folks run into is trying to take the kind of off the shelf and try to make it work,
Yep.
versus going through that exercise of really using your stakeholders to build the model.
Got it. Okay, great. As you've been building this out and you've been talking to a lot of other HR people across different companies, industries, what's another big trend that you've been noticing in how people are doing work or doing talent development?
Yeah, so I think depending on the industry I'm speaking to, so I speak to a lot of folks kind of in the skilled trades. And
Hmm.
I think one is it's becoming harder to find folks who have those skilled trades there. And then when you find folks that are willing to do the work, they don't necessarily bring the skills that they used to. They didn't grow up on the farm fixing the tractor, right? They don't know how to tear apart a diesel engine. So it's almost knowing as an organization that you're going to have to upskill those folks. You're going to have to build that training function in-house. And then another one is, I just think the new generation almost expects and demands this very personalized, instant, I need it to meet my needs. I'm not going to just accept you'll learn it over time.
They expect development, they expect a path, they expect personalization and coaching, and they want to know where they're going with their careers. I'm hearing this all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not that other generations didn't necessarily want these things. They weren't nearly as vocal about it
Yeah.
as the younger generation, right? And so this is allowing them to personalize, companies to personalize that more and give those younger employees what they want.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head earlier, where I was talking to a CEO and I asked him, like, what's your pain point? Like, what are you trying? And he
Yeah.
said, Scott, the thing that keeps me up at night is if we've got a tremendous amount of experience. And
Hmm.
I know, in the next 6 years, they had something crazy like 1,200 years of experience was going to walk out the door.
Hmm.
And he goes, it terrifies me to think, like, what are the things that we're not going to document or know? How are we not going to successfully transfer a generation's worth of knowledge to this next generation?
Yeah, it's
And
interesting.
how do you solve that?
Yeah, and there's a lot of things companies can do with mentorship and coaching and some of the stuff you're doing. Another idea that has come up that a couple of people have come and talked to me about is starting an internal podcast and interviewing many of those experienced people and
Yeah.
sharing that knowledge that way with younger employees. I'm working with a couple people right now have come to me about helping them start a podcast internally with their company.
An intern, that's so cool.
Yeah, I have a couple clients that are already doing it and some other people that are thinking about it. If you're someone that's been thinking about it, feel free to reach out to me. I love helping people get that stuff started.
I don't
Or
think
get
I'd be
involved.
nearly as good as you at this. So,
Well, who knows, right? But I do get that a lot. That I am very good at the interviewing, and it's a skill I've been working on and developed. And so it's a place where maybe I can add some value to other companies as well. Podcasting is just one way that we can learn. I also do a lot of reading as well, and I
yeah.
usually ask my guests, "Do you have a book recommendation or maybe a TED talk that you often recommend or has made a big impact for you?"
Yeah. So I think the biggest one, I think, is a very popular Simon Sinek, Start with the Why, in terms of a TED talk. Um, One book that I know has been really influential, which is coincidental because it's called The Principles of Influence, um, by Dr. Cialdini. And I think sometimes as training professionals, we forget that it is so important to kind of influence and lead up. because we can put together the best content in the world, but if we don't market it well and convince people of the value of it, we're going to have really great content that sits on the shelves.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, the best content, the best product, the best whatever it is, you've got to market it, you got to sell it, you've got to influence other people to get on board. The thing that you developed, you talked about earlier, you had to influence the key stakeholders, those top performers to get on board, to be supportive, to be champions, so that other people were willing to give it a shot and do this. Otherwise, nothing ever happens with it. And any other company that goes to implement this, they're going to have the same thing. They're going to need those champions to get on board. They're going to need those influencers. And I just recorded. I offer a program on influence called Influence Inside, and it's related to some of the topics that you read about in that book. And I just recorded a podcast episode about that as well, because I think it's so important. Whether you are an external consultant like me, or
Yeah.
you're working in a large organization, you need people to back the projects you're working on. You've got to have that ability to go out and influence.
Well, the number one reason a lot of folks are talking to us about utilizing Atlas is they have an LMS full of content that people aren't utilizing. I
Mm,
said, would connecting their 360 results to content that a lot of folks already have, great
yeah,
content.
yeah.
So we're just trying to act as the bridge to say, if you're here, let me just make you aware of this content that your organization's already offering.
Again, going back to what we talked about at the beginning of this interview, people are not aware of the development they need. So all
Yeah.
that content is there, but they're not going and looking for it because they're not sitting there at work going, man, I really need to get better at influence,
Yeah.
or I really
Yeah.
need to get better at welding. I think I'm pretty good already. Like, I don't know. I don't look around to see how fast other people are doing it or how good they are. And until someone, raises that awareness, you don't know to go look for that training.
You're so right.
Awesome. Well, last question I'll ask you, Scott, for anyone listening who is in training or development, and they're looking for ways to, more personalized learning and get their people utilizing those resources more. Aside from going out and checking out your software, which I hope they do, what's one more piece of advice you'd give to people to help them be more successful in their roles?
Yeah, the best piece of advice I think I can give is go out. Like, I think it's really easy. A lot of training functions aren't large, so you get really stuck in your silo, just bouncing off ideas with yourself. So go out, read books, listen to the podcast, and then just go talk to join your local training ATD or whatever chapter there is for you, and just go talk to folks. I think you'd be amazed that a lot of the people in this role are in a role like this because they love to help people learn and grow, and they're really willing to share. I know I'm 10 years ahead of where I would have been if I hadn't done that kind of benchmarking expedition and learned from people that are far more knowledgeable and intelligent than myself.
Love it. And I'm a big fan of learning and networking and connecting. As you know, we got connected through networking and through
Yeah,
a conference I went to. And that's a big reason why I'm hosting my first conference later this year, the Talent Development Think Tank, which is going to be all about connecting talent development professionals with each other, helping them build a network, learn more about the trends and things that are going on, benchmarking, and help people solve real challenges like this. So for anybody listening that wants to find out more about that, you can go to talentdevelopmentthinktank.com, and tickets should be available. Scott, for anyone listening who wants to find out more about Atlas and what you're doing and maybe check out the software, what's the best place for them to go for that?
yeah, www.atlasnav.us.
atlasnav.us. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Scott, this has been awesome. Really
Thank you
cool what
so
you've been
much.
doing there. I appreciate you coming on to share some of your experience and stories and advice. And so thanks again for coming on the Talent Development Hot Seat.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Andy.
You got it, man. Take care.
You too.